All right, you are all set, Jim.
Very good. Thank you. Welcome and good evening, everybody. I'd like to welcome those that are here in the room with us and those that are online. But before we begin our actual public hearing tonight, I'd like to acknowledge the members of our town board who are with us this evening. Supervisor Schultz, Councilwoman Bolsner, Councilwoman Stafford. It's nice to have you here. Thank you. Heather, can you please take the roll?
Walter Liss.
Here.
Craig Eckert. Rick Page.
Here.
Patricia Brill. Here. Stephen McIntyre.
Here.
Matthew Burkowski.
Here.
And James Gruner as chair.
Here. Thank you, Heather. A public hearing is being held before the Henrietta Planning Board today, Tuesday, September 21st, 2021 at 7 p.m. in the main meeting room, 475 Calkins Road, Henrietta, New York, 14467, to hear all persons with regard to the following application. It's application number PB 329, Lehigh Ridge Subdivision. We're looking at preliminary subdivision approval of a 113 lot single family residential subdivision on 69.5 acres of property located at Nevins Road and Authors Avenue in an R115 residential zoned district. This public hearing is being held so that you, the general public, can present your opinions to the Henrietta Planning Board regarding subdivision concerns specifically limited to trees, the lots themselves, open space, the infrastructure, utilities, sidewalks, and flood-prone areas. I do want to notify the public that this board will be taking no action on this application tonight. We're here strictly to hear your comments on it. Again, there'll be no formal action taken on this application this evening. So you are welcome to stay after the public hearing if you'd like. We are going to open it up to the board as a discussion item, but we're not going to do any voting tonight. Okay. Who is present representing the application number PB 329, please?
Good evening. My name is Peter Vars with BME Associates.
Hello, Peter.
Good evening.
Peter, might I suggest we've got drawings and things up here.
Yeah.
I think, can you turn that maybe to the audience so that they're able to view that? Thank you. So we're going to let Mr. Vars give a brief overview, and then if anyone in the audience wants to come up and speak, we will have you pronounce or I'm sorry, present your name and your address for our minutes up here. Okay. Thank you, Peter. The floor is yours.
Thank you. We are here this evening on behalf of Lairwood Estates LLC, who is the property owner and developer of this proposed development. And with me this evening actually is Mr. Bruce Howlett from Lairwood Estates. We are here this evening to present the overall preliminary subdivision plan for a single family residential development to be known as Lehigh Ridge. And Mr. Chairman, as you pointed out at the beginning of the meeting, we do acknowledge that the board cannot take any action this evening, nor will it be as a result of where we stand in the seeker process, which I'll reference in a little bit, but we do acknowledge that. But with that being said, we still do want to present the plan to this board to inform you of what the proposal is to allow you to begin your discussions as it relates to the seeker process. As you mentioned, the proposal is for a 113 lot single family residential development within an R115 zoning district on approximately 69.5 acres. The property is located to the south of Arthurs Avenue and Nevins Road off of Lehigh Station Road, and that's east of Middle Road. The property actually consists of 7 adjoining tax parcels, and the property is bounded to the north by the residential neighborhood of Arthurs Avenue and Nevins Road. To the east are the lands of the Aardvark Rugby Club. To the south is Interstate 90, the New York State Thruway, and to the west are the vacant lands, but also importantly on those lands is the Lehigh Valley, the Genesee Greenway Trail. The property currently is vacant. We all know it as it's the former lands of the Belfry Golf Course. The land is identified as abandoned or vacant farmland within the town's farmland protection plan, and the soils or the lands themselves are not identified as prime agricultural soils or valuable farmland. So the proposal is to develop this property as a cluster subdivision pursuant to Town Law 278 and Chapter 245 of the Town Code. We actually reviewed this cluster plan with this board back in March of this year as part of a concept plan, sketch plan review. At that time, we felt that there was a consensus of the planning board in support of the cluster subdivision approach to the development and design of this subdivision. During that process, and hopefully we will wrap up within this preliminary subdivision review, is the conventional plan. The board did do an initial review of the conventional plan for this property, a plan prepared per the R115 zoning. That plan subsequently was reviewed a couple of times by the Director of Engineering, and we've responded in kind such that our preliminary application did include an updated conventional plan that yields 113 lots, and that's the density we have begun with in preparation of the layout before you. That conventional plan was prepared in conformance with the R115 zoning criteria in that each lot had a minimum lot area of 15,000 square feet. The lots were 80 feet wide. So with that being said, the plan we've brought before you this evening is a cluster subdivision, and that's being done for a variety of reasons, which we'll reference here in a few moments. The plan does propose the 113 lots, but it also provides approximately 26 acres of open space, which represents about 37% of the total property area. The lot standards that we are requesting for this development under the clustering provisions of the law are a minimum lot area of 8,500 square feet, a minimum lot width of 60 feet, and a minimum front setback of 35 feet. The lots do intend to comply with the code required 8-foot side setbacks and 10-foot rear setbacks. The open space is an important component of this development. As we mentioned, it is about 26 acres. It is comprised of 4 parcels. The primary parcel is the light gray area that you see kind of right in the middle of your television screen there. That represents about 19 acres of property. As you can see, it establishes a buffer between the proposed development and the existing residential area to the north. That depth of that buffer is a minimum of 300 feet and is up as much as 700 feet is the range of that buffer between the new development and the existing development. The other parcels of open space are on the west side of what our connection to Nevins Road, and it's basically that side of the road right away. There's another parcel on the east side of the connection at Arthur's Avenue. Those two total about 2.5 acres. And then the last piece of open space is in the lower left-hand corner. It's just to the west. It's property to the west of the Genesee Valley Greenway Trail, just north of the thruway, and that's about 3.9 acres. So those are the 4 open space parcels. The clustering that we're proposing, we do believe provides several benefits. These were identified in the letter of intent that we submitted with this application. As we mentioned, the 25.9 acres represents about 37% of the total project area. As we pointed out, that we're using that open space to provide a substantial buffer between the new development and the existing development. That open space is also going to be used for passive recreation. It's kind of a little bit hard to see on the rendering on the television screen, but it is detailed in the plans that there is a trail network proposed throughout that open space area that will link up with the proposed sidewalk system to be constructed within the development so that we do have pedestrian accessibility connectivity, not only throughout this proposed development, but into the existing neighborhoods also. And then the other component is, which is that piece on the that we talked about in the lower left-hand corner, is also we're providing a key provision. There's a link here. That's an important link in the Lehigh Valley Trail of getting it on public land, so to speak. And this provides a key component of that that was identified early on to us in the planning process when meeting with the town and discussing this property. Excuse me. So in preparing this cluster subdivision, there were a lot of different things we had to account for. First and foremost, obviously, is the New York Power Authority easement through the property that is at the north end of our property. That is 300 feet in width. We're probably all very familiar with it. But in addition to that, running east-west through pretty much the center of the property, there also is a high-pressure gas main within a 50-foot easement. Combine that with a unique terrain, given of the previous golf course grading and the construction of 7 various, at the time, irrigation ponds that are there. There was, a lot of natural features to work around in this layout. We also wanted to be cognizant of the property's proximity to the thruway. And we also wanted to be sure we not only acknowledge the presence of the Greenway Trail, but that it got incorporated within the design and within the community. So the result is this plan we've brought before you. It utilizes the existing terrain. We obviously avoid the utility easements, not only the Power Authority easement, but the gas main easements. We do account for the Lehigh Valley Trail within the layout, incorporating it within the open space, that portion that's on our property, and being sure that we do provide connectivity to it through our own open space planning, and that we're also providing buffers to the existing residences to the north. Getting into the detail on this layout. So access will be provided to this site through connections to both Nevins Road and Arthur's Avenue. Those road stubs were left decades ago as part of the development as that property was developed from Lehigh Station Road moving south. The 2 streets would be extended into the property, as you can see on the layout. They will loop into themselves, but will also terminate in 3 small cul-de-sac streets. The streets within this subdivision are primarily proposed to be dedicated town streets, with the exception of a 6-lot area off of the Arthur's Avenue extension. That would be a private drive serving 6 lots. It's just south to that pond that's in the upper right-hand corner of the layout. But not only in addition to this street network, we're also proposing an internal sidewalk system that would be, we propose that it is constructed along one side of the main street, the Arthur's Avenue, Nevins Road streets. And through discussions with the town, the developer has also agreed that on Arthur's Avenue, that will actually extend that sidewalk along Arthur's Avenue beyond the property so that it connects to the existing sidewalk system that is at Wallman and Arthur's. There's a gap there south of Wallman, but that will make that connection to complete that. Obviously, with this, these sidewalks will also link with the proposed trail network that would be constructed throughout the open space. So this not only will provide these residents with access internally within their own neighborhood, it'll provide access to the existing residential neighborhood and obviously to the school further down on Arthur's Avenue, and also provides not only access for these residents, but residents within Nevins and Arthur's to get to the Lehigh Valley Trail. Obviously, with a project of this nature in this location coming off existing subdivision streets, access and traffic were issues that the town identified very early on for us to address. And that was one of the key issues discussed with this board back at sketch plan review, and has been an ongoing discussion item with town staff. So that's why it was very important with this layout that we provided a robust pedestrian plan within the development. But 2 other key things have occurred. One of the things we heard very clearly early on was the concern over construction traffic, utilizing Arthur's or Nevins while construction is underway, not only site construction, but house construction. We can report to this board that the developer has secured a construction access from East Henrietta Road through the rugby lands. So basically what will happen, it doesn't show too well here, is we will come off East Henrietta Road at where the rugby club is, run a stone milled roadway 14, 16 feet wide along their property line and bring it into this the easternmost cul-de-sac. So all construction traffic will be coming directly from East Henrietta Road into the property. There will be no need for any of it to be using the existing residential subdivision streets. A traffic study has been prepared for this project. The scope of that study was established through consultation with the town of Henrietta and the New York State DOT. It not only looked at the intersections, all of these intersections are with Lehigh Station Road. It not only looked at the intersection of Nevins Road and Authors Avenue, it went to the west to Middle Road and to the east to East Henrietta Road. That traffic study's been completed. It's had an initial review done by the town's traffic consultant, Barton and LaJudas. There were some modifications requested, and that those have been completed such that the report is being submitted to the New York State Department of Transportation. Obviously the DOT will provide their comments, and that will be a core issue with the town board as part of the seeker process. But we'll answer any questions you have yourselves this evening, but we also know the town board will take that subject in earnest also. But we wanted to give you that update of where we stand on that we've gotten it done, it's there, and now we're just waiting for the reviews to come in. Another key issue that was identified early on in this planning that we feel very good about of how we've addressed it is with stormwater and drainage. The application that was submitted to you includes the engineer's report. That engineer's report includes a comprehensive stormwater management plan. It outlines the design of the management plan that would be implemented on this property with the development. That plan was prepared in compliance and conformance with the town of Henrietta's standards and the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation standards as it relates to stormwater runoff, not only during construction, but also for the post-construction condition. We utilize the New York State DEC Stormwater Design Manual and their general permit for construction, stormwater activity from construction, such that the plan that's been prepared addresses stormwater quantity, volume, attenuation of peak runoff rates, but it also addresses stormwater quality and being sure that stormwater quality is addressed on site prior to any offsite discharge. A quick overview, or I'm going to say a couple of highlights of that plan, because I know a couple of these issues are very important, not only to the board, but also to, I imagine, some of the residents here this evening. This watershed, while the site itself is about 70 acres, this watershed's about 105 acres because it does include lands to the south of the thruway that drain onto this property via a culvert under the thruway. When the Belfry grading was done, there were a series of ponds constructed that they sort of were linked together, but they sort of were not. They constructed the ponds, but they didn't construct any outlet structures with them. So basically, pond fills up, spills over, finds its way to the next one. It's a series. What the drainage pattern out here is today, obviously, it's predominantly south to north. About 2/3 of the site will drain its way to the west, up towards the corner area of Nevins Road. And there's an existing pond there, gets into that pond. It discharges via a swale to the west, and eventually it drains into Red Creek, which is just to the west of the trail. About 1/3 of the site, about 32 acres, drains to the western corner, and it's that pond that you see in the upper right-hand corner of our rendering. That is where about 32 acres of the site drains to. Again, but that pond doesn't have an outlet structure. The design of that pond was there was supposed to be an outlet structure constructed and tie into a storm sewer system along Arthur's Avenue, where then the storm sewer goes and discharges to a tributary of Red Creek. Because the outlet structure was never constructed, that pond fills, there's some infiltration, but basically it finds its way over the berm and it drains overland and it gets into some of those rear yards of Authors Avenue until it finds its way to the storm sewer system. In other words, it's not a controlled drainage system. It was one of the key areas that the director of engineering pointed out to us when we first started. He says, there's a problem here that's got to get addressed no matter what you do out here. So the comprehensive plan we've prepared continues to use 5 of the existing ponds, but they are going to be enhanced to meet the requirements of the DEC for stormwater management facilities. They will all be outfitted with engineered outlet structures. So now we're going to be able to control how water is discharged from these ponds, not only at what rates, but also where it goes. So we have that component. The other major component is through the development and the installation of the streets and the storm sewer systems that will be constructed along that street network. We're going to dramatically reduce the drainage area that goes to that northeast corner to that pond, such that what was 32 acres finding its way to those rear yards in Authors Avenue is now being reduced to 3.2 acres. And it's really just going to be the area, that small segment of road of Authors Avenue that comes through the Power Authority easement, and then 5 or 6 of the rear yards of the homes that are on the cul-de-sac street, just their rear yards. The houses, the streets, everything will go to a storm sewer system. It still is going to discharge into that same pond, but we're going to provide an outlet structure that is actually going to be at the west end of the pond and convey that runoff into the larger pond that you see in the middle of the site. So we're going to take all that runoff that was going to the east, and we're going to take it to the west. And those ponds have been sized such that we can drain that additional land there, still attenuate the volume of the runoff and control its runoff such that in both instances now, discharges off-site are at reduced peak rates of runoff from what is currently happening. In addition, those ponds will include all of the necessary water quality treatment features that the DEC requires so that we meet the minimum standards there for providing water quality treatment within the stormwater management plan. Couple of other last things is all 113 lots will be served by public water and public sewer. And that'll be via connections to Monroe County Water Authority mains at the end of Nevins Road and Arthurs Avenue. The water main will be extended in and will run along the proposed street network to provide fire protection and also individual water services to each lot. The sanitary sewer system will be about a 60-40 split. About 60% of the lots will drain to the west and connect to the existing town sanitary sewer at Nevins Road. The other 40% will drain to the east and connect to the existing town sanitary sewer system at Arthurs Avenue. As we mentioned at the beginning, our first step in this process is the seeker review, the State Environmental Quality Review Act. We acknowledge and understand that the town has initiated a coordinated review of that. The town board has declared their intent to be lead agency, which we understand and are fine with. But we're here this evening as the planning board is an involved agency because of the requirement of granting subdivision approval, which we also acknowledge cannot be done until the town board completes the seeker process. So with that being said, that's our overview of the project as it relates to what we're here for this evening. We'll allow you to open, I shouldn't say we will allow, we know the public hearing's open and, to proceed, but then we'll be available to answer any questions that you may have at that time.
Great. Thank you,
Okay,
Peter,
thank
for
you.
that very comprehensive description of the project. Is that the handheld mic over there? Let's make sure that's on so you folks are able to speak to any questions that may come up. And at this point, I'd like to okay, very good. Thank you. Invite the members of the public to come up. And again, please just state your name and your address prior to your speaking.
I don't know if these are questions that anybody can answer now. My name is Jeannie Bowman. I live at 189 Garden Parkway. And I'm just curious what the prices of the houses are going to be, the square footage. Are trees going to all get, so many times we see these developments, they come in and knock all the trees down. What's going to be done to make it aesthetic and so that the birds and, everybody's happy. And I was curious why the private drive. So many times you see private drives, try and get 6 people to agree to get that fixed when it's appropriate, and I would never personally buy a house with a private drive with 6 other people. So I was curious about that. And also construction of the road or the construction road, 15A is got traffic, they speed. And I live on Garden Parkway, that light is ran. People run it all the time, trying to beat it. And it's really dangerous. And then you have Good Burlette and you have the Elks Lodge. And, you start getting these slow moving vehicles coming in and out of there. I could just see that, not being good. I don't know if another light could be installed or slow people down, but people are racing up and down that 15A every day. It's crazy. So those are my major concerns. We're also all concerned about this motocross thing, which I know you didn't get discussed tonight. And, we hear those motorcycles or whatever you want to call them now, racing up and down and back there. And all of us are very much against that. So, but I don't know if those questions are premature.
Thank you.
For
Yep.
this gentleman or.
This is Henrietta, Town Supervisor. I'd just like to address the motocross. That's not on the table here.
Okay.
They're not proposing a motocross.
Okay.
That's something that, in looking at what possibilities for the parkland to the south, that's something we're considering, but that's a whole other opportunity that wouldn't go forward without a public hearing, without a lot of discussion, without looking into a lot of things. So it doesn't affect this.
Okay.
So just make
All
it.
right.
Thank you. And Peter, I can have you address the other questions if you can.
Yes, and Mr. Chairman, at any time, whatever questions you want to address, just let me know.
Thank
Okay.
you. Yep.
Okay, I was kind of distracted getting the microphone going, so I think I missed your second comment, but
It's okay. We'll go through it.
the price of the homes have not been determined yet by the builder. Part of this process is getting through this process and understanding everything that would be involved. I can say that their target market is starter homes and families is what their target market is. The second comment you asked about landscaping, was it, or?
Well, I wondered about the square footage, but that probably goes hand in hand with that. They don't know how big the houses are going to be yet. Or is there a range, 1,500 to 2,000 or?
I believe that there'll be a mix of ranch and 2-story homes. So they will be on the, I'm going to say the low side, 1,600 to 1,700 square feet, but could be 2,200 to 2,400 square feet.
Okay. Tree removal.
Ms. Bowman, I'm just trying to speak into the mic. because
Oh,
we
I'm
record it.
sorry.
No, it's okay.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah. Tree removal was another thing that, I hate seeing when they go into these developments and knock all the trees down.
So most of the vegetation out there, our goal is to maintain the perimeter vegetation, especially along the thruway. But the majority of the vegetation out there that is left is successional growth because of the massive disturbance that was undertaken with the golf course. However, with that being said, as the board is aware, there is a requirement of 2 trees per lot. And likely what will happen at a 60-foot wide lot, once you get the driveway in and whatnot, we're likely only going to end up with 1 street tree per lot, but that's still going to be spaced very nicely. But the point is, that's still going to leave 113 plus trees to be planted elsewhere. And so we'll work with the board as it relates to buffering and where we think the best spot is for those, but we will comply with the landscape requirements of the town.
Okay. And then I was just curious about why is that a private drive?
Oh, okay. That was actually, it's a choice of the developer as it relates to your concerns about, how do 6 people get along? The private drive is required to establish an owner's agreement that's on file with the New York State Attorney General's office. It becomes part of the property deed, the maintenance of that driveway, the repair of it, how it's paid for and administered. It's a pretty hefty document that's administered through the Attorney General's office, and it is filed with the deed with each lot. So each buyer will be fully aware of what their responsibilities are and what their rights are. And then I think your last one was access to Route 15A.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
So with regards, obviously, the construction access to Route 15A, we feel was a very important component of this plan because of the concern of the existing residences. As it relates to the safety of that access point, the access point does have adequate site distance, but more importantly, that access will be regulated by the New York State DOT. They have very clear and concise what's the word, specifications as to how that access is not only to be constructed, but more importantly, signed, as in the warning signs and whatnot. And it will be DOT to decide whether, if on the safety issue, whether there needs to be any additional measures, whether it's a flagman or anything like that. But DOT will regulate that as the result of it being a state highway. And usually that maintenance and protection of traffic plan, that's what it's called, is also provided to the town and to their engineering staff for their review also.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
I'd like to know why we can't put an exit on Middle Road and East Henrietta.
Pardon me, may we
Sir.
get your name and address, please?
Robert Lonsky, 43 Authors Avenue,
I'm sorry, the name again?
Repeat that,
Pardon
and
me?
spell that, please.
Lonski, 43 Authors Avenue.
Thank you.
I'm wondering why we can't put an exit on Middle Road or East Henrietta Road. I mean, you've already got a road on East Henrietta Road coming out. Authors Avenue, with the traffic you have with the buses and the school kids, is not a good idea. It's a 2-lane road and we're gonna have all kinds of problems there. And Lehigh Station Road is the same thing. It's a 2-lane road. You realize with all them houses in there, the traffic you're gonna have on Lehigh Station Road, it's already bad. I mean, you know, I don't think it's a good plan.
Peter?
So with regards to access to Middle Road or East Henrietta Road, the property, the applicant, the owner has no access to either one of those roads. There are private properties in between this property and both of those public roads.
Well, we're buying all kinds of property. I mean, you know, I think we could afford to buy property that's safe for people. No, you can't answer that, right?
As I said, the applicant, the property he has under control are the 69 acres. And that is the property he has under his control at this time.
These houses that we're gonna build in there, are they rentals or they got own people owning them?
All of the lots are proposed to be for sale. They will be for sale lots.
What is single family home mean?
It's a dwelling unit intended for, by code, is only allowed to have a single, boy, help me, Chris. There is a pure definition of it in the code.
We
There
have no
is.
idea who these people are that are gonna own them.
If you want the definition for single family, in town code, it is 3 or fewer people living in the home, or 4 or more people who are related and living in a traditional family unit.
Single family, it's a family home.
That's the definition of a single family home. 3 or fewer people, period, or 4 or more people who are related and living in a family in.
Typical family, yep.
The word single means that it's a single house. It's a single house.
Yeah, it would be no different than the subdivision that you live in. Yeah, it's the zoning is R115, which is residential, single family, 15,000 square foot minimum.
So there's still no answer what we could do with Authors Avenue, to get away from the schools, the buses, the kids. It's only a 2-lane road. We were having problems now with it. I can imagine when you put another 100 homes in there, what it's gonna be a nightmare.
So I can tell you the traffic study that was prepared does look at the proposed traffic generation from the development It also incorporated existing traffic patterns and distribution, not only from the homes on Authors and Nevins that accounted for the school, but also the existing traffic along Lehigh Station Road. Not to get really in deep detail here, but the study was prepared. What was important, the study was prepared per a scope identified by the New York State DOT and the town of Henrietta, their traffic consultant, Barton and LeJudas. Between those two entities, there are standards that the study has to be prepared to meet. I believe Barton and LeJudas has found that the study does meet those standards. They have provided their review subsequent to the state review. What the study's findings are is that that the Nevins Road, Lehigh Station Road intersection operates at satisfactory levels of service and will continue to do so. It finds that the Authors Avenue and Lehigh Station Road meets some of the warrants currently as it relates to signalization of that intersection. The proposed development does not add any new warrants. It just reinforces those warrants. But what will be important, and I don't mean to steal any thunder from the supervisor behind me, but the DOT will have to review that and render their opinion as to what they feel is necessary as it relates to any mitigation. And the town board, as the seeker lead agency, would then also have to weigh that versus the parameters they have under the seeker statute to identify potential impacts and how and that they are mitigated to the best that they can be. So I guess maybe part of what I want to say here is, and I don't mean to be putting this gentleman off, but where we are in the process, we're at the 10-yard line. We have 90 yards to go. Okay. And so my point is there is a lot to be done. And the traffic issue is a very significant issue as it relates to everybody concerned. But we're at the point where we're now waiting for the DOT to render their opinion. And then what I imagine what will occur from there is then once the DOT renders their opinion is that the developer, our firm, our traffic engineer, the town, the traffic's town consultant, and the DOT are going to get in a room and figure out, okay, what is the appropriate, what are the impacts and what is the mitigation that's going to be required. We're probably a month or two away from even knowing what direction we're heading.
It's just safe to say there'll be a lot of eyes looking at this
Yes.
issue as we go forward. So
Is that gonna affect the wetland or the green land around Henrietta, Authors Avenue?
So we have looked at the property and wetlands. The wetlands on the site that have been identified are shown on the plans. Those have been verified with the necessary officials at the Corps of Engineers. This plan does not propose any disturbance to any regulated waters of the state or the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers.
Well, I'm more concerned about the kids in the schools and like I said, it's a
Mr.
nightmare now
Lonsky?
what this way is. You have sometimes, I'm sorry, you have to wait sometimes a half an hour to get in your driveway because the buses are there and the cars picking up kids and it's a nightmare. Right? And I'm concerned some kid's gonna get run over. I got people going down the street 40, 50 miles an hour. Stop signs, they go right through them. They don't mean nothing.
well, again, there'll be a lot of eyes looking at this. We've got the applicant connecting the sidewalks, which will be helpful. But as Mr. Var said, we're not there yet. We'll be looking at all this.
Huh? Yeah. Yeah, well, there isn't, Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Sure.
So what Mr. Vars was referring to is we've been working on the New York State DOT to try to get a traffic light put in at Authors and Lehigh Station Road. They have something they call warrants, which are basically formulas that they use to determine whether they do it. They unfortunately give us what I think are some lame excuses. One is, well, if there's not enough traffic coming out, it's more dangerous because people will rear end. As I pointed out today, as I'm going up East Henrietta Road, I turn left off of Calkins and there's a light at CVS. You can't tell me more people are coming out of there than are coming out of Authors when the school lets out. It's nuts. I understand. Right. So like I said, that's what we're trying to do is get a light put in there. When Mr. Bars was talking about stealing my thunder, that's, I think, what he was referring to. So we're going to try to get a light put in there. What would be really helpful? I will put out a petition for anybody who wants to sign that to the New York State DOT to say, we want the light. I'm also going to copy it to Senator Gallivan and Assembly Member Bronson to try to bring Albany pressure on the New York State DOT because, to be perfectly blunt, the state DOT does not seem to care about residents. Actually, the taxes have not gone up in 3 straight years for the town taxes, so that's not exactly true. Property values. The amount of dollars we collect in taxes has been flat for 3 straight years, but this is not a discussion of taxes. As far as what it will do for your property values, it will most likely improve the value of your home, but no one knows that for sure. But going back to the question at hand. So a couple of things, like I said, we're looking at trying to get a light put in. As part of the seeker process, we've been talking to them, going back to your concern about people speeding down Authors. We've talked about what's called a tabletop crosswalk. So if you've ever been on the RIT campus, they have these all over. They're elevated crosswalks with a ramp up and a ramp down. They're essentially giant speed bumps. And the thing that they do is they make the crosswalks very visible coming down. The other thing I would like to do is put in there as well, and this is something that we would apply to what's called a TAP grant, which is Traffic Alternatives Program. It's TAP CMAC. I don't remember what it all stands for. It's some state thing, but basically it's signs, sensors. So when somebody enters the crosswalk, it actually flashes an LED that there's somebody in there. So I don't know whether we'll get the grants for that, but we're going to try. The other stuff, there was a comment from the audience that there are currently no sidewalks on Nevins. Again, through the seeker process, we've asked the developers to consider bringing the sidewalks all the way down Nevins, because if there's going to be additional traffic there, we don't want kids to be walking or riding in the road. We prefer them to be up on the sidewalk. So again, that's all been part of the initial discussions from a seeker standpoint. As far as the outlet onto a 2-lane road, every single road around there is 2-lane except the throughway. And there's, let me finish. Every road around there, so no matter where you connect the houses, it's connected to a 2-lane road. And the current development has more than 100 houses, and they're all on 2-lane roads, and they all connect to. So I get it. I'm not trying to belittle the amount of traffic. I'm just pointing out what we're up against. The developers absolutely talked to the property owners to the east. They were not interested in selling. They talked to the property owners to the west. They were not interested in selling. They can't actually get all the way over to Middle Road because of wetlands. There's a huge, major wide creek wetland, very protected area. Understood, but again, there's no way to get over there with a road. In fact, we're having trouble even just storing concrete barriers there right now because of the DEC. So the DEC is very protective of it. So again, Middle Road is not an option. We did look at coming out through Hosmer's. We did with talking with these guys to have them come out through Hosmer's. They had discussions with them. They had discussions with the Aardvarks and the Elks, but none, again, those are private property owners. They chose not to sell. The town can't force them, just like we can't force you to give up your home. So, you know, we are absolutely looking at alternatives. We're talking with the developers from a seeker standpoint. We're trying to identify what the major concerns are and what can potentially be done to mitigate them. And if you're familiar with the way seeker works, We identify these, it's then up to the developer to come up with ways to mitigate those issues. If they've mitigated all issues, it gets what's called a negative declaration, which says there are no remaining negative issues. If they aren't able to mitigate them all, then it has what's called a positive declaration, which basically says there are still some unmitigated. And then it goes into potentially either the developer drops it or the developer goes into what's called an environmental impact study. It's a lengthy process to, again, try to find alternatives. So don't know where it's going to end up, but the goal of this is to let's identify the concerns. At the last hearing we had, the things that were identified, absolutely the traffic at Lehigh Station and Authors Avenue. The lack of sidewalks on Nevins was identified. The potential for speeding down Authors was identified. Connecting the sidewalks into the existing school network. Drainage along the backyards of Wallman and the southeast corner. Mike, did I miss any? Can you think of any others? Or Lisa, Millie? Those were the major ones. I feel like there's one more that I've missed, but construction vehicles. We did not want any construction vehicles going down the neighborhood roads. We realize that East Henrietta Road isn't necessarily the best. Well, shouldn't say that. It is the best solution. It's not great because that road itself is a problem. But no matter what, the only access is out. I mean, this thing is completely surrounded by state roads. So somehow we're going onto a state road that is narrow. When you just look at it, we were hoping to be able to come out through the Hosmer property, but they were afraid of the road, what the construction vehicles would do to their road. And so they did work out a deal where they would put in a temporary road, whereas they couldn't get the aardvarks to sell their land, they at least agreed to allow them to put a construction entrance through there. So, so like I said, we absolutely are looking at all those things. We want to know if there's anything we missed. And again, if people agree that there should be a light at Authors and Nevins, I would love to hear that, because we need to get ammunition to the state to get the state to improve that. Whether this goes in or not, I think there should be a light there. I don't know how you feel. My kids went to Sherman. Getting in and out of there in the morning and in the afternoon, we really could have used a light there, especially when the school buses are trying to get out. I absolutely agree. So I've also had discussions. One of the things that came up in a previous meeting was the people who park on Authors. The town owns land just to the south of Sherman. So I've reached out to Andy Whitmore, who is the assistant superintendent from the administration for the school, about whether they'd be interested in the town land there. I would just sell it to them for $1, or maybe swap land with the school so that they could expand the parking lot so that people aren't waiting on Authors Avenue, again, creating potentially dangerous situations. So I'm not sure what you're referring to, but again, when you're talking from the audience, it's not getting on the hearing, and anybody listening virtually can't hear that. But anyway, like I said, so those are some of the things we're looking at. By all means, again, the idea is to get out what your concerns are, talk about what's important, because as part of the seeker process, that's our job, is to list that, categorize those ones that we think are going to be a significant adverse impact. And then it's up to the developer to come up with solutions. And again, they've already come up with a couple and they've tried some others. So, but they have to come up with solutions as to how to mitigate those issues. So that's just to make it clear. It's not, again, we're listening. We're trying to get that feedback. What are the problems with this? We know that nobody likes to see new development, right? The standard thing that we hear is my house. They don't say it this way, but effectively, my house is here, so we don't need any more houses in town, right? So I get it that it's a lot of houses in the backyard. It's not technically the backyard, and on the street. But what can we do? What are those issues? What problems do those create? And then it's up to them to come up with solutions. on how to minimize that effect. Okay? So thank you. I'm going to turn this off for a second, change the cover so someone else can come up to speak.
Thank you, Supervisor Schultz. Heather, while we're waiting a bit, is there anybody online that might have a question?
Yes, I do have one question. It's on the Q&A. They asked, would the developers consider reducing the number of plots or houses?
So at this time, we've prepared the plan based on what the code would allow. So that is their intent, is to develop it per the code allowance.
Thank you. Thank you, Heather. Anybody else from the audience here this evening would like to come up? Yes, sir. Name and address, please.
Hi, Rob Bolton. I live at 236 Nevins. So I'm the last house on the east side of Nevins. I have two concerns. One is one of the remaining issues that was discussed at the last March meeting was as much privacy as possible for the people who directly border the new development. It looks like there's, if I can point at the map, two new ponds here. One of which, one of those mosquito factories would be next to my house. Whatever trails or ponds were there, has anything been adjusted since the last proposal? Because they were going to look at that and say, this was a beginning proposal. We can tweak some of these things. That was that. More importantly, I would whether my house wins or not on that issue, I really want to underscore the need for the traffic issue on Nevins. The scallop shape, the semicircles that the kids play in, sidewalks would be helpful. There's also all the feeder streets that are on the hills. The kids whiz down them in their bikes. Along those semicircles, there's blind spots. The road weaves. Some people drive like it's a video game. And that street was not designed as a boulevard, nor was Authors. The original builders of this property, Stanco developers, envisioned a quick U-shape and then finally concluded the U-shape connecting Nevins and Wallman, concluded after a while they couldn't get enough houses in there to make it financially viable. And so they stopped. They weren't thinking of putting 110 houses, 210 cars-ish, all of which are traveling the full length of Nevins and Authors before they even get to an outlet. Now, the outlet, the traffic light, that's one issue. I'm trying to underscore the awareness for Nevins Road and the traffic there. A lot of that, of course, is outside of what you can do for your jurisdiction. I would encourage whoever is involved in this decision, come turn around in my driveway at the end of Nevins and then just slowly go back down the street, maybe at a busy time, maybe not, and just kind of envision what kind of traffic is there. People walking their dogs, my wife and I walking each evening, but most importantly, a lot of kids, my grandkids. It's not a boulevard. It's a residential windy street. And that's what I got.
Thank you. Anybody else have any comments or questions this evening? No? Heather, anybody else online?
Not at this time, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Well, if there are no more comments regarding this application, I will therefore close the public hearing. Oh, Mr. Supervisor, yes.
I just want to do a hand poll just real quick. How many people here think that a light at Authors and Lehigh is a good idea? Okay, thank you.
Mr. Supervisor, you beat me to it. I was actually going to suggest that
Oh,
because we have this on tape, you might actually have them come up and say those that are for this. That way you have their name and address on file if you want to do your petition. It would be pretty quick if everybody just came up, said Matt Borkowski, 27 Edmire, that kind of thing.
Or a count on how many are attending and how many are saying yay versus.
I can do that. Could you show your hands again, please? Okay, so I counted 25 hands, 4, 6, 8, 13, 15, 20, 27 people in attendance.
Also, did everybody sign in when they came in the door? If you haven't signed in, and if you would, it might help us a little bit on the way out. If you just raise your hand, put an asterisk next to your name. And that might help us with that number as well.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, before I close the public hearing, I will open it up to the planning board here if any of our members have any questions, and I'll start with Mr. Borkowski. And again, we will be talking about this in the workshop session.
Yeah, the only thing I was going to bring up is what Supervisor Schultz did. So just to get a clear number of what we're talking about. So we might be able to pursue that, but that's the only thing I had for the hearing portion.
Thank you, Mr. Borkowski. Mr. Liss?
I would just like to say add 2 to the 4, the light. The 2 of the town board members didn't think they were voting, but since I counted them in the people present, I asked them and they said, yes, they're also for. So add 2 to the people who believe it's a good idea.
Okay, thank you.
And then the additional 3 for board members for total in attendance.
I guess I should count myself.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, the chair will recognize Mr. Liss.
I have nothing at this time, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Chair will recognize Mr. McIntyre.
I'll reserve my comments for the workshop.
Thank you. Chair will recognize Mr. Page.
Just a couple questions, Peter. I don't know if everybody's going to stay or not, but one of the things I was going to ask on the private drive, is that turnaround area that you have designated, is that big enough for the largest piece of fire equipment that Henrietta owns?
Yes, the
It's like a
turnaround,
backup area.
yeah, it does comply with the New York State Building Code based on the length of the private drive. They have the standard as what the radius needs to be and the turnaround is. So yes, it does comply.
Thank you. And Peter, I should know this, but I have a hard time with traffic studies, understanding them. So what are the peak times in the morning and the afternoon? What are the hours that they use called peak times?
Okay, so actually, because of the school, the PM peak was modified, but I'll explain. So the AM peak hour is studied between 7 a.m. to 9 a.m.
Okay.
That is the main commuter peak in Monroe County.
Okay.
Or this New York State DOT region. And so counts are taken through that 2-hour period, and then you identify what 60-minute block in that 2-hour period do you generate is the most traffic passing by or whatever. And that is your peak hour, such
Okay.
that then when you take your projected trips from the development, you apply them into that peak hour so that you're comparing peak generation from your proposed development to the peak on the existing network. So,
And the afternoon hours?
pardon?
The
And, oh,
af-
yes. So typically, the PM peak hour studied is usually 4 to 6 PM. However, because of the presence of the school, that the study was expanded to count from 2 PM to 6 PM, so that the school traffic could be accounted in there to see if that created a peak that was not being seen after the 4 PM hour. So,
Okay. The reason I ask is I just want to match it to the time that the school starts and ends.
Yeah.
I think it's a late school. I'm not sure exactly, but I think they start around 9. So that would be outside the peak hour. Okay, thank you. And the other thing is, is this going to be done in phases? And what are the proposed timeframes for those phases if it is?
okay. Yes, it is proposed to be developed in phases. At this time, it's proposed to be in 2 phases. The plan does show a phase line, excuse me, and it is about 50-50. About 55 of the lots would be in phase 1 and the remaining 58 lots would be in phase 2. So the development process, bear with me, obviously, depending how long it takes us to get through this process. The developer is hoping for a spring 2022 construction start. Development of those 55 lots could take up to 2 years.
Okay,
And then after that, phase 2 would be developed. So we did a build out of a 4-year build out as it relates to the traffic study and everything.
thank you. Thank you very much. I'm all set.
Thank you, Mr. Page. The chair will recognize Mrs. Brill.
I will hold my question regarding the private drive.
Thank you. Anything, town staff?
I'm all set, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Okay, one last invitation to the audience. Anyone else to come up and speak? Yes, sir. Name and address, please. Mhm.
James Sidell, 28 Wallman Drive. You put this gentleman's concern was traffic on Authors. You put a light there, it's gonna back up traffic. Now, you had the 100 cars coming down Authors, the 100 cars going down Nevins. And then you've got Florendon, they're coming out of there. You've got the new apartments, those haven't been completed yet. You're gonna have all sorts of traffic coming out of there. At some point in time, Lehigh is gonna be backed up all the way past the railroad. Could even be backed up all the way to Middle. And I don't think that's much of an exaggeration. Most of these studies, I understand, have been done in the last year. While it's been a COVID year, we haven't had the traffic patterns going to the school. I think a light there is going to be a disaster. Unmitigated disaster for any resident who live in that track. So,
Well, thank you for that comment. Peter, may I ask you about the traffic study? You know, is that true that it was done during the COVID year and
So it is explained in great detail within the study. But just the overview is we had traffic count data pre-COVID. Part of it is because of other developments that have occurred in the area, such that we were able to get a good snapshot on the pre-COVID school traffic. In addition, New York State DOT has issued guidance to the traffic consultant world as to what adjustments are to be made to any counts taking during COVID. And that's explained in a lot of detail in the report. Anecdotally, what they are finding for schools is that actually traffic during COVID was higher than prior to COVID because of the parents, because parents were driving their kids to and from school at a higher frequency than relying on school transportation. But what we had the benefit on this study was we did have information at Authors in Lehigh from some previous studies that were recently pre-COVID done.
good?
Okay.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Okay, thank you. If there are no more comments regarding this application, I therefore close the public hearing. The planning board will now adjourn for 10 minutes and then we'll open up our regular workshop schedule. So thank you all for coming and you're welcome to stay if you like.
I misunderstood. I thought maybe some of the people would leave. So information is about it. I did my comments before the workshop so that the people would hear the answers because I anticipated that I would leave. My first question that I is why in the world would they be
Save, it looks like Save Road.
Well, I guess, yeah, but what I'm saying is, so they'll still take dedication of the sewer and water and stormwater, right? We won't plow that road or fix it up.
No, but it's not unusual because we have flag lots, you know, that can't be accessed by the consumers.
Yes, I know. Oh, hi, Lisa. Nice to meet you. Yeah.
Good.
All in great. Can't get everybody connected to the same road. She just came over to that night. Yeah. I wasn't professional. I haven't seen the product cluster. I haven't seen the cluster.
Good.
Hi, how are you? Hi, nice to meet you too. I am. I'm in a secret event. I'm staying? Yeah. Oh, is it?
Speed bump.
Hi, Lisa, Jim Gruner. Nice to meet you.
So much. Yeah, crazy. Yeah, and I saw some recent grandbaby pictures. I still can't believe that far away. Like, oh my God. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
I don't. We just found out my daughter is expecting our second one too.
Congratulations.
It is. That really is. Yeah.
Yeah, I always say, oh, you can use those hand-me-downs. Awesome. Great seeing you.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, so struggled, but so I downloaded the
You open up a separate file and download
I
it
downloaded from
from their shared drive.
correct. So I couldn't find it anywhere. So I accidentally found it.
So you created your own folder
Correct.
and loaded it. Okay.
And then you can actually highlight and circle and annotate. Right on.
So do annotate. There it was. What does that
Yeah.
Oy.
So annotate, you can erase, you can use. Well, you can use that red, blue, or highlighter. And then the other thing I was yeah, you can drag, that's cool. No, discuss. And then that is a note specific to 189. And then, so like, no, annotating is, yeah. Somewhere. Oh, here. Nope. But then you have the text box.
It was a crack. Put all that money into it, you know.
You have to be very careful not to write. Have to download it. And then the verbiage was use offline. Or be able to view offline or something like that. Yeah, pretty cool. So the text box.
See 113 colors, 113 houses. Everybody's got 2 files. All the time. Yep.
Yeah, it's the highlighter or whatever. That is cool. So I wanted to talk about.
For 4 years.
Yeah, I don't know. Yes. Yes. No, it's so, because I use it on my thing. I just took a chance. It's so cool, right?
When you come out, the cards are on top of the keyboard. Sure.
Yeah, right.
And then very careful, cannot take notes of the original. So.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of work.
So when you go to people and you go to these, just open up this one and take the notes on it. And it's. Not really, my friend. Isn't that funny? I absolutely downloaded it. Oh, look at now, I can't even get it.
Doctors are pretty amazing.
Yeah, the throughways. Yeah.
All right.
Oh, God.
Okay.
Holiday.
So tutorial is needed.
Yeah. Hey, Matt.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's all, no, it's okay. You good?
Chris's chance. You know how we do. Anytime you're ready.
Okay. All right, good evening, everybody. We're going to move into our regularly scheduled workshop session this evening. Before we start, I'd like to recognize Councilwoman Sefranek. I didn't see you walk in earlier, so thank you again for being here tonight. Members present tonight are Matt Borkowski, Patricia Brill, Rick Page, Walter Liss, Steve McIntyre, and town staff, or I'm sorry, Dan Mistrella, Planning Board Attorney, and town staff, Chris Martin, Director of Planning and Engineering, and Chris Hauser, Deputy Director or Assistant Director of
Yeah, close enough.
Planning and Engineering. Yep, thank you. First item on the agenda will be the minutes from our August 17th, 2021 meeting. Chair will entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Mrs. Brill. Have a sufficient second, please. Mr. Page, thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Yes. Mr.
Was, and I read them and yeah. No, I can't. That was
Okay,
a whole month ago already.
thank you, Mr.
Thank you,
Borkowski.
Mr. Borkowski.
Good
And
judgment.
Mr. Page had the second.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, once again, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. The opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The minutes are accepted. Okay, so first item on the agenda this evening is application number PB 329, again, Lehigh Ridge Subdivision for preliminary subdivision approval of a 113 lot, single family residential subdivision on 69.5 acres of property located at Nevins Road and Authors Avenue in an R115 residential zoned district. Now, the planning board is here to discuss the application for the purpose of providing comments to the town board for the seeker review. Again, no action will be taken on this application this evening. So, Peter, I don't think there's anything else you need to say,
Nope.
unless you want to.
No, no.
At this point, I will open it up to the board and I'll recognize Mr. Borkowski. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
So Peter, you mentioned that based on how you're going to kind of redesign this, you're expecting major drainage improvements. Like,
Yes, we did take the approach to improve the
Right.
current situation.
and have there been any before? I know we've had some public hearings. Have there been any like neighborhood meetings?
Yes, there was one held, don't quote me on the date, but it was prior to the March sketch plan hearing.
Okay.
Yes. there-
And those things came up like the drainage and
Yes.
improving it, and they were probably
Mhm.
happy about that. Okay,
Yep.
excellent. You already answered how long the process is supposed to be. Okay, so my big question here is this. In order to get the cluster that you're looking for, we talk about open space. But a large swath in the open space, let's call it open space 1, which is where the power lines are.
Mhm.
Can we really count that as into the equation? It's not like you can develop it.
I'm going to say yes and no, because obviously the easement itself precludes there to be any construction within the easement area, structures, I should
Mhm.
say. But why we believe it is incorporated as part of the open space is from the standpoint, though, that we are able to use it as passive recreation area. In other words, we are able to take the trail system through there. And also because some of the existing ponds are there, we can enhance those as part of the stormwater management component, which typically are located within the open space lands. And so it's the combination of the trails with that. I think if you look at the conventional plan, we didn't account for structures within that easement either. It's part of the 26 acre, I think is parcel A. It's part of it, yes, but there is a component of it that has some restrictions to its use, but it is still able to be an open space area.
Okay.
Yeah, and Peter, if I may, as part of the review process, the applicant's engineer did send us the conventional plan. And we actually reviewed it several times, and the lots, I can't remember, maybe it was 120 lots originally or somewhere in there.
Yeah. Mhm.
And because of that review, there's some lots that we said that just didn't make sense. Maybe there wasn't much backyard, or, maybe it just didn't make sense for whatever reason or another. So they were able to reduce it down, and the number of lots that they now have on the conventional plan is 113. And certainly if any member wants to see it, we can send this to you digitally so you can take a look at it as well.
So,
What was it? Good.
Mhm.
okay, so it does work out mathematically even,
Yeah.
okay. That wasn't really my big concern because it seemed like to me a little bit of a loophole. But if he's telling me it's okay, I guess it's okay. Let me just see if I have anything else. A question as far as going through the rugby field. Are you just going to stay as far north, like close to the tree line when you guys are accessing this property?
I'm going to ask Bruce.
We're to keep it to the north part of the our system, so as far north as we can keep it.
Until you hit the trees. Okay.
Be north of their field.
Yep.
We're gonna enhance what they have and make it better for them to.
I'm sorry, but Bruce, can you grab a microphone? We can't hear you online.
Sorry about that, Heather. I know better.
So we're gonna be coming in off East Henrietta Road. We're gonna enhance their area so it's better for their parking. And they have an existing, not gravel or anything, but driveway they use north of their field. And then we're gonna take that, it's gonna be about 20 foot wide and millings and take it down so it's gonna reach our property.
Okay, so you're just extending. So I know you really can't see that, but you're basically just gonna take this and extend it. Okay.
Correct. He's actually pretty straight, just maybe. Just
Right. Okay.
Thank you, Bruce.
I think that's all I have, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Borkowski. The chair will recognize Mrs. Brill.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Peter, I know you addressed this, a woman in the audience earlier had the question about the private drive, but I just don't understand why that's there. I'm very confused by that.
Sure.
And I don't know if that's you or Bruce or.
No, so there's a couple reasons behind that. First of all, the private drive, the lots themselves will be comparable in size to the other lots within the subdivision. So they're not lesser lots or throwaway lots, anything like that. They will be served by public water and public sewer. Okay, so they will have a water lateral and a sewer lateral. As to why the private drive, though, a couple of reasons. If looking at the conventional plan, we had the 113 lots on there, and we took those lots, we worked them within, the existing ponds and the terrain and everything that's out there. Preparing the cluster plan through consultation with Bruce and the builders, it really comes down to, okay, there's certain areas that, while yes, you could build on them, is it really the best land to build on? And I'm talking about areas at the southeast corner on that cul-de-sac where there's a couple areas where we're filling in existing ponds. And while we can fill them in and have a level of comfort that they can be part of backyards or build a driveway across, we just aren't comfortable having a house constructed on fill. Okay, just structurally, it's just not something we're comfortable doing. So really what we did was said, well, why would we put houses there when we have this area off to the north there that is suitable for these lots? And why the private drive? We looked at doing a dedicated road that went down there and then turned south and looped back up into the road system. But the reality of it was just not economical. Once you put the dedicated road in, that additional length of road made those lots very expensive versus the private roadway brought the cost of those lots more in line with the other lots within the development. Actually, the idea on the development is the builder actually is thinking that's where he's going to build his 3 or 4 models. That it will basically, he's going to create a little area there that he's got his 3 or 4 models right there. The customers can come in, pull in, and they're right there almost in a row versus, scattered throughout the development. So it is kind of one of the offshoot benefits of it, but it really just came down to siting these houses in an area that was more suitable for the house construction but also providing the infrastructure economically.
In a private drive, they'd have to be responsible for their own snow plowing and all that?
Correct. Maintenance of the private drive, including plowing, resurfacing, sealing, all of that is the responsibility of the homeowners. Yes.
And we do have those, Patty. Stonefield Muse did the same thing where they had a major, dedicated road in the subdivision and then like a little offset where they had 5 or 6 houses. Boxfield subdivision at near Fail Road Extension. Again, it was kind of an odd piece of property and the developer wanted to get a couple extra lots, so they did the same thing. So not unusual. I mean, we don't see a lot of it, but It does happen.
Thank you all set.
Thank you, Mrs. Burrell. The Chair will recognize Mr. Page.
I asked my questions already. Thank you.
Very good. Yeah, the Chair will recognize Mr. List.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome.
You know, for my own education, I just had a statement. There's a statement on the form here. I just wonder, what does an economic layout of infrastructure, roads, sewers look like versus a conventional subdivision layout?
Sure. So just to back up that comment one step, if you go to into Town Law 278, which is the enabling legislation that allows municipalities to adopt cluster subdivisions. Town Law 278, one of the things it says is that while a developer can ask for relief from bulk area standards of the code, in return, there should be community identified benefits. And it kind of has a list of, I shouldn't say a list, but it explains what those benefits could be. Some of the primary ones are open space preservation, clustering lands that are suitable for development, preserving open space. But one of the things they do talk about is economic and efficiency of infrastructure. So that's where it comes from. But what does it mean? Is that the short of it is that if you were to total the amount of infrastructure, length of road that is proposed to be built to serve these 113 lots on the cluster subdivision compared to the conventional plan, there is less infrastructure needed to serve the 113 lots on the cluster plan. And, and what that, while it is a lesser development cost for the developer, it's also a lesser operation and maintenance cost in perpetuity for the municipality. Those sewers are dedicated to the town. Those roads are dedicated to the town. There's less length of it. So that's where that comes from. And but you got to understand that enabling legislation, that it identifies it, that can be a benefit that it's achieved.
Thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate that. I know nationally there's a shortage of single family homes, and I know here in Henrietta, we do need this kind of development. I really look forward to seeing it come to fruition. And there's a lot of work that went into this project, and I'm looking forward to it, actually. And I really, that's about all I have, Mr. Chairman. I just right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. List. The Chair will recognize Mr. McIntyre.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome.
Peter, I've got 3 issues. Let's do the boring one first. The reduction, runoff reduction value that you had created in the drainage study. I guess Vanguard Engineering questioned that value.
What they question is and we will meet with them. We've already reached out to meet with them to review not only that comment, but all their comments. But what that comment revolves around is the plan prepared meets the minimum RRV requirement, runoff reduction volume, that the DEC identifies within the stormwater design manual. The Vanguard comment is, okay, you've met the minimum, but why aren't you achieving the 100% value?
That's because the roads and the houses, roofs weren't taken into account.
Well, it's more of a function that how you can get closer to that 100% is providing more water quality treatment. We're looking at that of where we can expand those areas, but when you can't meet the 100%, you kind of need to justify why. There's 2 primary components here that makes it difficult to meet the 100%. One of them is, I think we're all familiar with, is the soils in Henrietta are not conducive to infiltration, which is one of the key means of achieving runoff reduction value, because basically you're taking the runoff and allowing it to infiltrate into the ground versus collecting it and discharging it. So the soils themselves create a challenge. But then the other component here is the restrictions of the gas mains through there, because we're not able to cut or fill over them. So that created some issues for us as to basically having area where we could grade in some of those bioretention areas. But we will address that to the town engineer, or excuse me, to Vanguard, and resolve that with them. Our reaction to that comment was, okay, we need to do.
The
We need to
information
respond.
will be available prior to them having to do the secret determination.
Oh, yes, without a doubt, because we acknowledge that Vanguard in essence will have to sign off on the stormwater management plan so that the town board can say, hopefully, that there is no potential significant impact on runoff.
Now, just as kind of as a follow-up, when you take into account the housing, the roadways, driveways, anything that's impervious, do you look at any other future development on the sites? Like, for example, if 50% of the houses decide to put up sheds in the backyard, which would add to the impervious area?
So how we calculate that, there's a couple of things. Part of it is the design manual itself provides certain provisions, but we basically use an estimate through talking to the builder as to what we believe is the typical footprint. So, as you know, on our plans, we show a box, and typically those are the largest footprint. So not all of that is. Maybe, long story short, is Mr. McIntyre's. At the end of the day, if there is the addition of a shed or whatever, it's such a nominal number when you're talking a 105-acre watershed that the DEC considers it, inconsequential. That we don't have to backtrack.
It doesn't change the value all that much.
Exactly.
Even when you take into account all the sheds grouped together.
Correct.
My second issue is on the signalization of Authors Avenue. This came as a recommendation from the traffic study, correct?
So what the traffic study presents or states is that under current conditions today, I believe there 3 warrants are met. There's 8 signal warrants that the DOT looks at to determine whether a signal is necessary or not. One thing to understand about warrants is that word itself, warrant. Just because you meet a warrant doesn't mean DOT says a signal light is required. It's as you accumulate warrants, they just look at it that much more in depth while they take into account everything else, their responsibility of traffic and access management and everything. But the point is, currently today, we meet 3 out of the 8 warrants, which typically suggests that a light should be considered at that location. What the traffic study goes on to present is that with the additional traffic from this development, we don't add any additional warrants. We just reinforce the existing warrants that are met. And what those warrants are, they relate to side road traffic. In other words, this warrant looks at to say the delays on the side road, in this case, Authors Avenue, become so long that it is, that it's not an efficient traffic flow system. And they look at a 4-hour gap, for instance. So, but then DOT weighs that against, okay, what are the volumes on in this case, Lehigh Station Road? What is the accident rate history at that intersection? What is the pedestrian movement? So they just take that as a component as part of a larger picture. And that's why I said, and Mr. Martin and I were talking actually before the meeting, I said, it will be interesting to see what their reaction is. Typically the warrants in this study that are shown that are met, I would say the majority of the time usually does trigger the installation of a signal light. But I can't sit there and say, yes, there definitely will be a light. But typically the warrants that we're meeting that are being met out there today would typically trigger a signal light to be installed.
Well, here's my issue. It says that in order to increase the level of service on Lehigh Station Road, Nevins intersection, signalization at Authors Road would find that as an attractive alternative for traffic in the general area.
Right.
But isn't that having the opposite effect? I mean, you're now drawing more traffic to a road that has a school on it. mean, why
Correct.
not reverse the whole thing and put the signal at Nevins? Draw a lot of the traffic over to Nevins rather than try to add additional traffic to the school road.
I probably should be careful here because, we did not do the traffic study. Okay. So that was done by a consultant of ours, McFarland Johnson, who's done several studies in the town of Henrietta. So I do need to understand that what I'm about to say is not from our own work that we did on that study. But I do know from what that study looked at is if you look at Nevins Road does not meet the warrants. It does not meet the side street warrants, just like the variety of the other streets on Lehigh Station Road don't. And the reason why authors triggers it is because, as I mentioned, it's the 4-hour warrant. When you look at the volume of traffic on the side street over any 4-hour period of time. As we talked earlier this evening, the fact that the school, you expand that, has that peak leaving whether 2:33, 3:30, that takes that PM peak, which is normally a 2-hour segment, and gets you the 4 hours. So it's the school that actually triggers the warrant because they generate that volume of traffic in the early afternoon. So that's how you get there. So, okay.
I understand it. The last issue I had is when you do a build out of development, are the lots that are around the cul-de-sac, do they tend to build out last? Those they're mostly pie shaped or wedge shaped, however you refer to them. Are they the least attractive lots on a development?
Our experience is usually the cul-de-sac lots can be some of the first lots to go because the people prefer the privacy of them and the fact that they know they don't have any pass-by traffic. And usually they're priced accordingly too. So usually the cul-de-sac lots are typically priced a little bit higher.
So people actually like the lots that have the small fronts,
right,
large backs. Now, when you go to build a house, is there a restriction to how big a house they can put on those? Because
no,
well, got a 5-foot setback. If they want a big house, they've got to move further deeper into the lot in order to get it to fit.
So what we do is the size of the house that can be built on the cul-de-sac lot is the same size of a house that could be built on any lot along a tangent section of road. And how we know that is we ensure that the lot width at the front setback line is the same as the lot width as a regular rectangular lot on a tangent section. So because we make sure of that, so the developer doesn't get into that situation of like, oh shoot, I have a pie-shaped lot. I can't get my house on there unless I push it back another 20 feet. We make sure the lot width at the setback line on the cul-de-sac, even though they're pie-shaped, is the equivalent to what we have on the rectangular lots.
So a 35-foot setback will work in those pie-shaped lots?
Yes.
With the existing type of houses that you're going to.
Correct. Yes, the lot dimensions we use, the minimum 60 foot, that was based on talking with the builder as to what his footprints would be.
This is a standard procedure where somebody buys the lot, and then they work with a developer to put the type of house on there they want.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly.
I am all set, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. McIntyre. I just have a question for Bruce, and I'm not sure you might be at liberty to mention this, but are the houses for this site going to be similar to what you have at Howlett Acres at all? And if you can't talk about it, that's fine. I'm just curious if you're looking at the same type of structures, perhaps.
They'll be real similar to the ones at Howlett Acres. When you look at them width wise, they're going to be the same. There was the question, the footage will be between square footage between 1,400 and 2,000. The price, again, because of COVID has changed a little bit, but the actual builder of the houses is saying more like 250, nothing over 300.
Mm-hmm.
So that's definitely a starter home, trying to keep it a starter home.
Yep, great. Okay, well, thank you. Board members, anything else?
One question.
Yes, Mr. Mastrella.
If you're on the 6 lots on the private drive, is that going to be a formal homeowners association filed?
I believe with the 6 lots, they'll do it's a de minimis one that they file with the Attorney General's office because they won't own common property because the lots will have flags that will give them frontage to the right of way. So it'll be, I believe it's called a de minimis action where it's just the drive themselves that they're responsible for because there's no common property owned by the HOA.
Okay. Mr. Martin, anything from engineering?
I'm all set, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you
Peter,
very
we're all set.
much.
Thank you for everything tonight. Okay, next item on the agenda is application number 21-013, AT&T co-location for final site plan approval for the installation of an AT&T mobility antenna on the existing tower located at 2007 Brighton Henrietta Town Line Road in an industrial zone district with a mixed-use redevelopment overlay district. Who is here, please, representing the applicant?
Mark Fuentes, Smith Development.
Would you be kind enough to spell your name? It's pretty muffled at our end.
I'm sorry, it's M-A-R-K.
Mark.
Last name is Fuentes, F as in Frank, U-E-N-T-E-S.
And you're from where?
Smith Development.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
I know. Oh, but it's spelled.
A-I-R-O.
Yes, I
Okay.
remember seeing that.
Not like the band.
Okay, the floor is yours, Mark. Thank you.
Thank you for having me on the agenda tonight. AT&T is proposing to install 3 sector frames on the existing 185-foot self-support tower at 180 feet, along with 9 antennas, 15 remote radio heads, 3 squids, 9 DC cables, and 2 fiber cables. And inside the existing fence compound, install a platform with an equipment shelter and other ancillary equipment. It's pretty standard telecommunications install. We're not increasing the height of the tower or the footprint of the existing fence compound.
Very good. Thank you. Okay, the chair will recognize Mr. Liss. Any questions for the applicant this evening, sir?
No, I'm all set, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Chair will recognize Mr. McIntyre.
I'm all set, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Chair will recognize Mr. Page.
I am also all set.
Thank you. Mrs. Brill.
Thank you. I have nothing.
Okay, Mr. Borkowski.
Yes, there was comments on.
I'm all set. I just think we should have had this in before all the other stuff.
Yeah, thanks for your patience, Mark. I was thinking that too.
Not a problem.
Anything from engineering?
Just seeker, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll read the seeker. Seeker review indicates the action under consideration is an unlisted action as per section 617.7 C1V III. The Henrietta Planning Board, as lead agency, has determined that the proposed action described below will not have a significant effect on the environment and that a draft environmental impact statement will not be required. The action under consideration is a site plan application by Smith Development. It is an unlisted action and will not require a conditioned negative declaration. The purpose of this application is for final site plan approval for the installation of AT&T mobility antennas on the existing tower located at 2007 Brighton Henrietta Town Line Road, excuse me, in an industrial zone district with a mixed-use redevelopment overlay district. All relevant areas of environmental concern were identified. Evaluation and examination were carefully made in relation of the existing conditions versus the proposed site improvements. It has been determined that there will be no adverse environmental effect as a result of the proposed action. I, James Gruner, therefore make the motion that we make a negative declaration and that the chairman be authorized to sign the statement of environmental significance. Do I have a sufficient second, please?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. McIntyre. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The motion carries. And the chair will entertain a motion on application number 21-013.
So moved.
Mr. Page,
Second.
Mrs. Brill, All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. The opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The motion carries. Mark, you're all set. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. And with sweet emotion, we're done. We can go home and dream on. How's that?
Yeah.
Think about that all night.
No, it just popped into my head 2 minutes ago. Okay, thanks, Mark. We're all set. The motion to adjourn.
Thank you.
What did he say? I was talking there.
Thank you, Mr. Borkowski.
Second. I didn't know what he said.
8:48. I said with sweet emotion.